And there you go, Leighton. You're on the phone when the show starts. Go figure, eh?
I was just putting it on silent. Thanks as always, Ken, for taking the time to host us. And Joshua, welcome back, my friend. Oh, you're on mute.
There you go.
I don't know why I did that, but I was on mute. It's funny. I always feel like Star Wars when that show and the intro comes on. It's great. But yeah, it's great to be back. Always out there fighting the good fight, as we say, and preaching the work. But just not like I'm preaching the simplicity, right? And the biomimicry, because I feel like the people that the people that come to me for help, whatever kind of help that is, but generally pertaining to gardening, I'm saying, is like, not novice people in a sense. Yeah, I can help somebody that's kind of more advanced, or, for sure. I've had people in workshops that have been growing cannabis longer than I've been alive, but have come to multiple of my workshops. And so I understand, like, there's testimony in various ways, and I think we can learn from everyone. I'm not here to pretend to be an expert. I just understand that, like, people come to me and I seem to be able to help them. And that's kind of just a humbling experience, honestly. So I simplify. That's what my forte has been, in the 10 plus years, I guess, teaching gardening, is like, just keep it simple, honestly. While the work may be behind the scenes super complex, I like to keep it simple. And I always use the analogy of a car, how complex an automobile is. Like, seldom do we run into a master mechanic. It's not like we all have one in our phone. We would love that, I guess, but we all use a car every single day. We just trust the process and the concept that we turn the key and, accelerate and brake appropriately and use the turn signal and the wheel and blah, blah, blah. Like, we all come from various backgrounds and we all learned how to drive differently, and we're all navigating different terrains to get to different places at different times. And yet it's this single concept that aligns us and allows us to arrive safely. You know what I mean? So I feel like I treat gardening that same way. And like, so when I ran into you and the things you're saying, biomimicry and horizons and stuff like that, it's like, fucking yeah, like just kind of like, duh, almost. Like, hang on one sec. Because I was shoveling through old books and stuff, just like thinking of stuff I wanted to reference, and I forget what year I got this book. Oh damn, you can't see that at all. Which way? There we go, kind of like that. It says the biology of soil, but it shows the horizons. I mean, and it says a community and ecosystem approach. So I mean, I have a bunch of. Wait, there we go. I think that angle. Anyway, you see, like, there's bedrock down there, the alluvial horizon it's being leached into. There's some grass up there. So like the O horizon, the humic layer, it's just stuff like, it's not even new information per se. It's like, as far as Earth is concerned, it's certainly not, but I don't know. It's so revelating for so many people, but at the same time, for me, it was just refreshing because, like, I feel like I just grew up looking at nature. And so, I mean, I have just seen things like that, I guess. And like, maybe not known why, but known like grass doesn't grow in the middle, you know what I mean? And stuff like that, or rocks, things settle into certain layers. And I feel like the missing component to a lot of us is just observation, just that ability to be still and patient and observe and go with our own intuition, right? It's like we give too much credit to experts.
I think that's the human nature, is to complicate things in a manner that you are the expert, when in reality you're an idiot.
Right? Yeah. No shit. We don't know anything. I think
you didn't just look at nature and say, "Oh, well, that's how it does it. Why aren't I?"
Right. Yeah. No. And I feel like sometimes I don't want to feel like I'm anti-culture in however I help people, but that's sometimes how I feel like I can come across. just more of like, you've heard me say this, like, look, the cottonwood doesn't know any of this biology, so to speak, from what we understand. I don't think it knows any of the biogeochemical reactions going on, and yet it just grows because it follows suit. You know what I mean? It of course is pre-designed, but it's that design that keeps it going. It's that simple. The leaf matter that falls every single year and feeds the microorganisms or the arthropods, whatever it is in that, or whatever tree that's deciduous. I mean, carnivores. I always say that conifers are different. Like the forest matter is, fungally dominated. But anyway, my point is the process is like it's governed by cycles, and we interrupt those cycles either for myriad of reasons, right? But like when we biomimic, I swear, I'm not new to gardening or that farming approach, the totalitarian approach, right? But biomimicry and regeneration is one of those things that, like, when you do it, it changes your life, because nature's already there. It showed up for you, and it just was waiting for you to show up, and validate everything you're doing. So that's what I kind of wanted to share today is like, trusting your intuition and bringing back some of that missing component that I feel like in modern agriculture anyway. And again, I guess my people are your average Joe, or in my case, my average Frank. He's my client and buddy right now. But it's those people. I'm not, but it's my family that runs farms in Nebraska that tills every year, that's releasing CO2 and stuff. So it's like corn and soybean monoculture Monsanto farm. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate, like how many acres they have and what an effect that actually has versus on, like, how measurable my impact might be in Frank's 2/10, right? But nonetheless, I feel like it's imperative to have this voice. Like, look, nature's trying to tell us this every single freaking year. Fall. It's fall, and it can literally be as simple as that. That's as, I know sometimes we demonize simplicity in this, whatever you call it, community or industry. I don't really identify with the industry much as I do the community, but I think simplicity is key sometimes. Like I said, we can all go down the rabbit holes, but I think if we can just literally, like Fukuoka said, chop and drop, man, it's like it, and watch the miracle happen. And then you can, adapt or whatever, but less is more. Just try it and see what happens.
Have you ever approached your family that owns those farms about at least opening their eyes to some other alternatives?
Dude, yeah, don't get me started, man. So I sent, well, and it may soon not be my family, so to speak. I guess I'll just leave it there and I'll catch up with you. But I told the farmer, if you will, look, check this episode out. And I sent him the one that you guys did with Farmer Kyle. Because remember, I asked you recently, and I'm like still dying to know pretty soon. Like, what was the new this year? But another time. Oh man, I just can't wait. But no, I sent him that because the family, if you will, has 180 acres or 1,800 acres, maybe. It's something in those. I don't, move the decimal one. I don't know which one. But the guy that has been managing it for them, he manages millions of acres, and and he's been listening. It's one of those things where he told me already he had a little plot, like an experimental plot where he'd done some cover crop and things like strawberries and beets and things like that, where I'm like, okay, that's pretty unconventional. That's cool. I like what you're, in Nebraska. I did forget if I said that. We're talking rural Nebraska here. So, yeah, I've tried, and it's one of those things where I don't think I would take on honor, so to speak, either. It's just more of I wanted to show them, but yeah, they listened to the podcast, supposedly, him and Dan, the guy I'm referencing that manages like millions of acres. So if they listened enough, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, unfortunately, especially for people that are managing that volume of farms,
Right.
they're not going to make the money that they used to. The farmer's going to make more money because it's going to save money. But if you're selling fertilizers to millions of farms, you're getting it a lot cheaper than the small farmer, and you're making a lot more money in that line item. So it's very difficult to get people to take that silver spoon out of their mouth for doing the right thing and not just be lining their pockets. So, anytime I deal with companies that are, how do I say this, multi-tentacled. So they have their tentacles in all of these different components, from grain storage, fertilizer cells, application equipment, leasing equipment. And that's usually what you're dealing with a person that's managing 1 million acres, is that they're tentacled. They're not just your average farmer Joe going to these fields and making sure that the plants are being planted appropriately, and et cetera, et cetera. No, they are getting money. They're earning money from all of these different avenues of which that they use to support that 1 million acres. Right. So again, and this goes back to, how do you shift an entire thought process that has been programmed into people's heads since fertilizer became available? I mean, they're programmed, dude. It's deprogramming is way harder than to teach someone how to do something. We used to laugh about it. It's like, oh, I got to unlearn and reteach. Well, as soon as I try to unlearn you, I'm a bad guy, because I'm saying, no, everything you know is wrong. Everything that you're doing is hurting something. It's not benefiting anybody. Maybe it's benefiting your pocketbook, but that's called karma. And that shit's going to come back at you. And you're going to be old and tired and beat up and be like, oh my God, look what I really did. What did I accomplish, man? Yeah, I own these cars and this house. But what did I accomplish, man? I degraded the fucking soil. I poisoned people with GMO corn.
Right. So, the veil gets lifted for everybody at different times, right? And it's heavier for some than others, maybe. But
well, I think the worst part about it is that nobody thinks about it in the moment. They wait till it's done, and then they regret. And then they're remorse. And it's like, dude, you had 1 million opportunities to change, to learn, to try to get with the program of what was here before what killed a lot of the shit. Yeah. Right. And that's my frustration as a human, as a spirit, that I can't convince them now while they had a chance to do something, and therefore I'm going to have to suffer in their remorse in the future. So why do you think I do this?
We need to be able to Scrooge everybody, send them in the past, the present, and the future.
Oh,
and
what a great idea.
I don't know how we do it, but that's what we need to do. We need to Scrooge everybody.
Fucking great idea.
That'd be great.
I'm going to have to manifest on that motherfucker. How do I Scrooge people and show them how gorgeous nature was in the mid 1800s, and then flash forward them to present and say, look at the dirt, look at how no nutrition is in our food, and look at all the completely obese, malnourished humans walking around on the fucking planet. Well, more so in the United States than anywhere else, but
sure. But planet wide, we have a lot of problems, you could say, on how we treat the planet, and but definitely with agriculture, for sure. Like the tilling is killing, but also killing is killing, and like I was listening to something recently about the CO2, and just this non kind of mainstream thought process of like how we have so much CO2, there's so much CO2, we got to sequester the CO2, which I think we need ethical approaches. Like I don't believe we should be tilling, and like that is a tenfold problem that goes, in directions that we shouldn't even have to be counting, right? But it reaches all the way to the ocean and shit like that, right? Like this is a big problem, but the bigger problem, or really the cause of the big problem, so to speak, is the fact that we don't have any fucking photosynthesis going on. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to give this person credit. Matt something was saying this. I like
Matt
this
Powers?
analogy anyway. The analogy, this is why I bring this up, because it's like we bitch about how much CO2 we have, but it's like we flooded the engine when the engine is photosynthesis, right? But we've fucking got a smaller engine now than we had, say, 6,000 years ago, right? That where there was like massive trees and massive fungi and stuff like that. But supposedly just the arbuscular mycorrhizae fungi, just that like one genus is like 30 megatons of carbon each year, produces that much megatons of carbon each year.
It sequesters.
I forget. No, yeah, well, no, it's producing the CO2, I mean, right? So it's producing the carbon dioxide.
Well, no, the fungi are actually storing carbon that they've sequestered from CO2 into their hyphae.
Yeah, but what they breathe, I mean, their respiration, because they breathe out CO2.
Fungi, I believe, breathe in CO2 and excrete oxygen. It's the bacteria that breathe in.
Vice versa.
Mushrooms produce
the
CO2.
Fungi,
all right, that's mushrooms, right? Mushrooms are the fruiting body.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So
like arbuscular mycorrhizae, like some of the, I wouldn't say that would include fruiting mushrooms, though.
But so let's try to drill down on this. The fungi are storing carbon that was created through the release of oxygen. So when you break down something, you have all these things. You have hydrogen, you have oxygen, you have carbon, you have all these different tools. And each organism uses different ones of those to create other things for itself. This gets super, super complex. So I think one of the biggest misnomers of, yes, species will breathe CO2 and some will breathe oxygen. Without a high level of oxygen in the soil column, in other words, aggregates, the bacteria can't survive and it compacts. So the bacteria need oxygen. I believe the fungi can go either way, but I know for sure that they do release oxygen when they are sequestering carbon to store into their shells, into their hyphae. So there's a number of studies that show that the necromass, that means the overall biology in the soil, stores more carbon than any trees, all trees combined. Like it's way, way, way higher. And that's where when you till, you're releasing all of that stuff. You're killing everything.
Sure.
So you're negatively impacting the level of CO2 because you compacted the fucking soil. And now organisms can't live in there and function properly. And
it is. It's what you're saying, but I was saying the other half people don't think about is the complexity that we have destroyed. Like we all know the fungi sequester and store the carbon below, and it waits on a protozoa or something to, then make it either finally stable or plant available, like be remineralized, right? But what we don't say is like all the tilling that we've done since the Fertile Crescent, right? Do or don't believe the Fertile Crescent or whatever, but since the birth of modern agriculture and tillage as we know it, this totalitarian approach to agriculture, we've been quote unquote collapsing the soil life structure, minimalizing, reducing the soil life biology. And the fact I'm getting at is the more fungi that since they're quote the dominant species in our soil, or the like as far as per mass, right? We've destroyed what would have been even more of them that would have sequestered even more carbon, but also had been given off more CO2 as they're respirating, which does then feed the plants that are respirating and trading carbon for oxygen. Like they have to trade carbon for oxygen. That's how photosynthesis works. So if they get carbon, they give off oxygen. And then that's the missing component. We've killed all the plants. We fucked the soil up. Now we've bitched about all this carbon. But the fact is, like, our engine's not working because we're fucking,
I think it goes way beyond that. And I think this goes back to fucking money. Carbon sequestering, carbon harvesting. Carbon has been made this fucking white elephant. It's right, not real. Right. There was so much more carbon back in the dinosaurs' day.
That's what I'm saying.
Everything was lush. Everything was growing and blooming. Mm-hmm. So, to say, oh, the CO2 levels, the CO2, fuck you.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at.
But bottom line is that we do need to change our agricultural practices into a more, I'm not going to use the word sustainable, because sustainable doesn't mean shit. Sustainable means you're level. You didn't do anything. Well, we got to do a lot now because nobody did anything for the last 150 years. So, I think the focus needs to be on methane. I think it needs to be on ammonia. Those are hundreds, thousands more damaging to global, I'm going to call it the aeromass. Like, there's this woman that I'm hoping to have on the podcast soon, and she did the work with studying biology in the wildfires in California back in 2018. There's a whole life in the air. There's a whole nother biosphere of biology in the air. And she's like the only person that has even discussed it. So she's the world's expert because no one else has ever even discussed it or talked about it or looked at it. We in the natural farming communities and the biological communities, this niche that we understand there's biomes in the water. We understand there's biomes in the soil. But do we ever talk about biomes in the air? Very rarely, very rarely. And that's another thing that we've got to start talking about, is that you put ammonia and methane up into the biome, you're killing off the aerobiome, right? You're not helping it. If you're putting off CO2, cool, that's going to help. You put off oxygen, cool, that's going to help. But harmful methane, harmful gases, no, that's destroying the air biome. Dude, sorry, I was wound up when I got here, and now I'm even more wound up.
I mean, no, it's true though. It's for sure. There's spheres, right? We've all learned about the spheres. I mean, and that's to me what the horizons kind of get to is, spheres big and small, and our awareness is of them, but mostly we focus on the rhizosphere here, right? I guess.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's that is what I was saying though. The atmospheric CO2 gets such a bad name, and I'm like, but why? Really, we should be getting a bad name for ourselves, and the fact that we've diminished CO2 in soil life. That was the stable lungs of the whole freaking thing. I mean, so that's kind of what I was getting at, is we've diminished our life, and then here we are again reducing ourselves to pointing the finger at something as simple as CO2 that's so freaking abundant we cannot live without it. Like, I don't know. It boggles my mind, but it also makes me laugh. That's just why I'm like, I don't know, man. That's why I'm not an expert, bro.
Well, I think again, it's programmed. I think it was the fossil fuel industry that has basically, programmed us to believe that burning gas and burning coal and burning oil is causing no effect on the planet. So now that their pants are down around their ankles and they're about to get raped, they're going, oh, CO2, we can sequester it now. We can make up for all of our damage. We're going to pay you with carbon credits. So it's a bait and switch, man. It's just, take their eyes off the ball. Bread and circus, right? You know what bread and circus is. It's created by the Romans because the population was going to friggin' rise up and take them out. So they go, we're going to feed you and give you gladiators and chariot races and all kinds of fun shit to distract you from the fact that we have literally destroyed you, and we've taken over the world and turned everybody into slaves. It's the old grasshopper and the ant fucking story again. And so by distracting with bread and circus, you take the people's eyes off of the truth and what's really going on, you can continue to fuck them. Excuse my language.
Yeah. Wow. I've heard they were real nice people.
and I don't know how we lead it back into weathering, but if you'd like to.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what it starts, right? When, one of the first things I ever heard you talk about the story for me with cannabis in a nutshell was like, oh, nice. I love that you can zoom in on those, because I was going to ask you if you could. The thing for me in a nutshell was like, I had been a no-till, more or less no-till, but understanding that cold composting and at least for me in my practice, that cold composting was better and more diverse, because like I could literally see hyphae running through it from the saprobes, and it smelled more finished, like when a nose knows. A lot of times hot compost is still thermophilic when it's quote unquote finished or gotten to you as a person who's supposed to then grow with it. So anyway, I was already long into this practice when I was kind of figuring out, how do I apply this to my ganja indoors? And I learned, like most people say, oh, you can't bring that stuff indoors. I had a very hard time, let's just say, trying to do it without guidance. And this is back in like 2012, right? I was trying to just bring living soil inside and in tin soup cans. But I had earwigs everywhere, springtails all over my freaking carpeted closet grow. So this is still during Prohibition, and it just wasn't good. So I went away from trying that for a while and just like went organic bagged and organic newts. And I've talked about Nectar for the Gods before. And because again, they're so, I won't say clean of a line, but like, as far as nutrient companies go, they do really have a good carbon footprint. They try, let me just say that, right? Because none of us live in a perfect world, and they are a nutrient company, but they have a pretty amazing carbon footprint. So again, I always kind of plug, I don't try to get anybody on a bottle, but I'm just saying, I know when people reach for bottles. But also I was going to tell you guys, because I know you referenced I think Hortical or something like that.
Yep.
Have you ever tried using their Herculean Harvest? It's calcium. It's liquid bone meal, but it's calcium from, like, almost everything in their entire line has calcium in it. It's all calcium derived. They're almost the entire line, which is so interesting. But this is liquid bone meal from, I believe, cows.
What is the name of the product?
Herculean Harvest. I could send it to you too, but also, so people that are not even.
I was going to ask Ken if he could pull it up and zoom in.
Okay. Yeah, well, the thing, when I used to go in the grocery store, people that don't even use this line at all used to use it for, what the heck would they use it for? When they were flushing.
Ken, if you find it, zoom in on the label so we can see what the ingredients are.
I think that's what it was. People would use it when they're flushing, because calcium has an 8-ring bond, right? And this is like almost like pure calcium, if you will. Everything is like plant available, but it's what do you call it? People would use it to flush. And then the other thing you would use during your sweetening process, kind of like Tyler was on the last week, that product that they had, the calcium lignin sulfonate that's in one of the products that he brought up. They liken this to like liquid fall. Or no, sorry, that's the sucrose that they have in something like that. But the calcium lignin sulfonate is, like he said, a microbe food. It's like tree bark, essentially, liquid tree bark, from calcium that comes from lignin rich material like trees, not bark necessarily, but trees like, wood. So anyway, I had a lot of luck with this line.
Just getting Herculean nutrient for people. What? Am I searching wrong?
Herculean Harvest.
Herculean Harvest.
Yeah, liquid bone meal. But anyway, not to distract too much, but just that was kind of the segue, was like, oh wow, I can kind of grow clean weed this way. I mean, I was still flushing at the end of my grow and still having to use new soil and crutch feeding. And I've told this story before. It's the loser's game, because if you are running late and you overshoot something, like I could never go on vacation because my plants were always hungry. It's like, to grow really good weed that way, you grow, I'm not saying weak plants. Like, I don't want to bash I'm not trying to do that, but like, you grow dependent plants, right? They become hungry. And I've heard them say that. And so like, they won't deny that, but it's one of those things where I could not like, cool, man. We planted them, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're like, is the water reservoir full? So, cause that's what I want to show you guys today. Like, since I've met Leighton, and got kind of on this whole project, I've more or less been kicking back and growing good ass weed and showing people how to do that too, you know? So that's what I'm talking about. Instead of the Hortical, you should just give it a shot.
Did you get the ingredients, Ken?
No,
I'm not
they're
sure
not
what's on
showing.
Hortical either. I've never even looked it up, but
They're not showing any ingredients.
I hate when you do that. I mean, that is one of the only reasons I'll buy anything, is because of the ingredient, and most companies don't even show the ingredient online.
It doesn't say it on there,
and it just showed the front of the label. So you'd have to call the representative and get it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you go on their website, I'm sure it's on there, because I know I've read it before. They're really transparent, generally speaking. But anyway, I'm not here to pimp.
Hang on, Josh. Go in the search bar and say ingredients for Herculean harvest. See if they do that. You know, and the reason why I care about this is because one of the things that I think you misspoke on was that calcium is got a double electron bond. So that's why it's used for flushing, because it'll push salt and it'll push potassium off the CEC sites.
Sure.
So that you're getting a restart, a jump. But if you look at the ingredients, what I have noticed is that some of these calcium derivatives work better than others, as far as that's concerned. So I've found that
it's like a flusher, you mean?
Typically, I found that the calcium derived from organic substances, like shells, like bone, are way better. They're more
bioavailable, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was the word I was looking for. Bioavailable.
Right. Yeah. That rather than the limestones and the calcium carbonates that people otherwise would put in their soils, not necessarily to lump all calcium carbonate, but yeah, that was my point too. And I don't know what Hortical is. I've never in my life used a bottle of CalMax. So let me just say that shit, right?
Yeah. Well, the Hortical was a product I was introduced to 2 years ago. It was relatively unheard of here in the United States. A Mexican company that specializes in organic nutrient line for commercial ag out here in California. He introduced it to me, and as a matter of fact, when I first got my hands on it, everything was in Spanish, so I couldn't even read what the fuck it was in it. What does it say? Calcium phosphate. Okay. All right. So it's a mineral. It's a salt. And that was the other thing was Camino. So I just did an experiment. I was hoping to have the data back today, but I didn't get it, with Logan Labs, where I'm trying to get the saturated paste to perfection. So I want 70% or 75% calcium, 18% magnesium, 17 or 18 magnesium, 7 or 8 potassium. Right now, my potassium is a little high, so I tried this Calmino product on this matrix, this A horizon I'm blending for another project. And if the Calmino did it, that's fantastic, because it's an amino acid form of calcium. So when I was speaking with the head couple guys over at BioAg about this, they're like, we don't know if it'll work or not. I mean, we know it's plant available, but will it affect the CEC sites? We don't know.
Right.
So they're kind of more excited about it than I am, because it just
send it to me.
Yeah, it gives them a whole new way to use this product in balancing soil saturated paste tests.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean that speaks to the chemistry behind it. I mean, the biology drives a lot of it, but if it's not there, and that's our job to put it there or make it habitable. But yeah, I mean, the chemistry is powerful stuff, and I mean,
Yeah, and
that's
so
I think what's been partially the demise too is like we know we can grow plants with just chemicals, and it's also like, well, yes, but here's how nature does it with well, because also nature's not perfect. So I mean, that's the other troubling part, right? Is like it's hard to it's hard to create perfect and maintain perfect, but you know, I don't know, somehow nature just has this ability to allow the diversity to be the buffering thing it needs in order to be robust, right? Because I feel like I don't know, we have a hard time replicating that in the lab, so to speak, which is, you know, but
well,
it's
you can't.
interesting to see those effects for sure, nonetheless. Like, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
you can't replicate it in the lab. You can't. And remember, she's got tools. She's got lots of tools. Like she can grow, she could, or during the spring rush, she could grow up a bunch of indicator plants. I'm not going to call them weeds.
right?
That will pull certain nutrients out for the crop that she wants to come next, the flowers or whatever.
Sure.
So, we discount the fact that she's doing all of these things, behind the scenes to just continue to build the beauty and the succession of the soil system. We as humans, again, and like you said, yeah, we can grow with just chemistry. That's been proven over and over again. I mean, there's still biological actions that are occurring in the rhizosphere. Otherwise, those chemicals wouldn't do anything.
Right.
So there definitely has to be a biodigestion of the chemicals in order for the plant to uptake them. But that's nature. Nature can adjust for that. Nature can, or in some cases we can. I mean, why do you think the hydroponic guys freak the fuck out about pH? Because if their pH is not right, boom, plants are dead.
Yeah, it's so fragile. But that's where with living soil and it might even just be living soil in general, but I've kind of like stayed in the lane of using the horizons, and then also mostly just the worms. Like I'm making sure I'm feeding the worms and whatever else is in the dang soil all the time. Because I have not checked pH in like 3 years or better. Right?
You don't need to.
It's never been a concept.
The soil, the plant regulates pH as it sees fit.
And
that's what it does.
Right. And the thing is, like, too, my water, right, I'm on a well for everybody that might not know. Last I checked, it was 8.6, I think. You know what I mean? Like, not ideal for plants. If you were just to have a potted plant and you're giving it 8.6, I'm like, that's not going to last very well for you, bro. That's not going to go long. Unless you're in living soil. So, I mean, I guess I'll help us along too with, because I want to show people Frank's garden here also. But not yet. I want to, so the weathering we talked about, like basically that's how soil's formed, right? Like I showed you that book. That's the bedrock material you've talked about in the longest time. Like there's the ways that soil is formed, and like talking about the entire soil matrix isn't necessarily what I mean to do. But to talk about the horizons and the why they're there, though, and to show you some people that might not have ever seen this, like, look, here's literally what we did in the bed, and here's what it looks like. So you don't have to go crushing up rocks. Like I didn't crush those rocks, by the way. I don't know, can you bring those back up, Ken? Those are a perfect example of weathering. Like that happened all on its own, right? Like those are some, I believe, volcanic. Not that one too. I mean, I was almost disheartened when Leighton says that travertine, but like other geologists have also said that's travertine. It's like the coolest freaking fossil ever, though.
Well, you know what that is? That's a chemical reaction. That's crystallization.
Right.
That's what we call those metamorphic rocks. So, it's cool. It's badass.
It's badass, and tons of surface area, which is important. I mean, as far as like if that were a soil molecule, which sometimes, right, like I don't know, that's
aggregate,
aggregate, right? Not a molecule. Thank you. Yeah. if it was shrunk down. But the other two rocks is really what I was getting at, that like that one's like almost seen its day. And I did not do that. That's a, I want to say it's a basalt, which our creek is just lined with basalt rocks, which are like a really high in phosphorus volcanic rock. We have tons of volcanic rocks around here. We're close to Sedona, Arizona also. But that one's like been basically pulverized, probably a lot from the last flood, but then this last freeze thaw cycle. And that's what's left of it. And then down it goes into sand, right? And then clay, or, you know.
And don't forget, when it heats up, it expands and cracks and pops.
Right. So the other rock here, show them that other rock. That's even better. It's because it's like not there yet. Like check that out. That sheeting, you see that sheet? It's like totally slid off the side. It's like, that's exactly what you're saying. So it's not all the time that people get to see this. Like, these are rocks in my backyard, and all I'm ever doing is walking around looking down, right? And I'm like, I send you rocks, and I'm like, dude, check this one out. But yeah, that, you look at that big old sheet, it just totally chunked off there. So anyway, those go in the bottom because if you go to, let's go to transportation, Ken. I'm going to try to remember everything I sent you, but it took me so dang long to do it. I am not an IT guy that I think I got it now. If we go to transportation 1, I believe this also can, and I'm so glad you can zoom, because look, that's what that's what my creek, my backyard turned into one day. Well, lots of days actually, but this was just from the last flood. The river that's normally 30 feet across our backyard max turned into over 300 feet across. And I mean, that's probably 25 feet deep out there. I wouldn't go out there.
Right up to your fucking, your orchard, or not your orchard, your vineyard too.
It was, it was super sketch. I was like, dang, this might be.
Yeah, you called me, dude. We talked.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God. Like, dude, just breathe, just let it happen. Whatever's supposed to happen.
Let it flow. There it goes. So, I mean, yeah, we lost trees on that one and yada, yada. We talked about that. But like, so check out what's left. If you go to the other pictures. So that's like right here. If you zoom in on that, go back to that sand real quick, Ken.
Look, that's nature's compost pile. I used to argue with people like, oh, nature doesn't make compost piles. Bullshit, it doesn't.
Yeah, right. Those are like hugelkultures almost on their own, right? Like when you leave those alone for too long, they absolutely become banks of life. And it's hard to, as a person that's a steward of this land, to take those piles after they've been there a while to move them to, you know what I mean? Otherwise, be a steward further to the land, right? Because realistically, them being piled up like that is not necessarily the most beneficial thing to the land per se long term. Like it is in one way, yeah, because it's like such fungal, like the saprophytic fungi are just rampant through those piles left 3, 6 months, 9 months. But what they also are doing is starting to rot the base of the trees sometimes, or like I've seen trees root into them, which is cool. But yeah, so zoom into that snow mound right there. So that, if you look, it even has horizons in it. You see right there? Yeah, there's like a little horizontal, like the way that the river drifts in, because I know, I mean, people have heard you say this, Leighton, but I mean, it's just a fact. Soil oftentimes is formed through transportation, right?
80% of all soils on the planet are,
which is either like some dust, or in our case right here, the river, right, brings in sand, silt, and clay annually for me. But it's like, yeah, you're looking at a little silt layer that drifted in, and then some organic matter right there you can see. So it's like, it is exactly this epicenter of life, but left to its own unstewarded thing, it becomes crazy, unmanageable, nonsense almost. So if we go to the next one, the transportation 2, I think there's something in, I know I'm going to try to keep us moving. And I think oh yeah, that's right. I sent you pictures of the clay transportation 2, right? So that's, oh no, never mind. Transportation 2 that's like sand, silt, clay kind of amalgamation after flood. And then that other picture is like all silty, mucky, like the stuff that, Leighton, if you've heard him talk enough, he talk about anaerobic pockets in the creek beds and harvesting anaerobic bacteria or anaerobic microbes in general, aquatic anaerobic microbes. And they're right there. That pile stinks to high hell when it's dying, right? When it's flowing through the river, it doesn't, because it's doing its own thing. It's oxygenated. Once it's left in anaerobic like that, it stinks to high hell. And like you said, you got to stabilize it. So you try to dry it out in order to use it. But in our case, it's so abundant everywhere, you don't have to. I just wanted to show as an example. That's like, here's how literally the soil forms, you know. So then I think, does that take us to E-Horizon? I think it does.
Okay,
I believe
I'll head for E-Horizon. Oh, and then of course I closed it because I'm a fool. So hold on.
I was going to say, because I would also, I always talk about to everyone that I come across about the grassroots fabric pots, which is so fantastic. You just had Tyler on.
Yep. And we have a discount code for him down in the description box for you guys, by the way.
Nice. That's awesome. So this is the 4x4. The first one I did was a 4x2 and then a 4x4, but I do everything in Horizons now, as you'll see. Like, I mean, even in 3-gallon pots, like, it's funny, but like you have to understand it differently and not expect everything to be the same. Like, I'm not expecting what I want from a 4x4 to do in a 3-gallon pot. It's just not there. But the soil tension is there. Right. That's the sweet thing that's about the Horizons. The Horizons doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the cover crop and necessarily the living soil per se. It's the fact that, like, literally nature makes these Horizons, and here's why. And here's how too, but like, here's why. Like, and here, or maybe not here's why, but here's what nature's done about it. Like, once it happened, here's how nature's evolved to take advantage of it and like use high tension to its advantage. But that's the A Horizon. I'm getting ahead of us. Right.
And don't worry, I know that there's some people have a hard stop, so you can come on next week as well, and we can go through a bunch more of this stuff. So take your time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to show the pictures because I'm like, I don't know if everybody quite, when they listen, that's one thing, but like, I am a good example of somebody that, I'm blessed right now. I can do this with you guys, but I don't often have the chance to jump on YouTube. I have to wait for stuff to become available to download on Spotify. And then I can, so if somebody's trying to access a video that's showing like, hey, here's how you build out a horizontal, it can be tricky and kind of like overthinking it. And really, it's not that complicated. That's what I wanted to show these pictures of. It really not necessarily jump into all the things you've jumped in before, but rather the like, hey, here's one that's been in action. Here's what it turns out. The proof is in the pudding, like 10 times over. So that's a mix of stuff I've had around the property, some stuff I had from different projects or whatever, but course diversity, right? Surface area, different, they're going to all offer different minerals or different nutrients is a good way to just say it, right? Because who knows what's all in all of those. Like, some are going to break down to be phosphoruses. We know different rock dust that come from different places offer different things, right? And so plainly, I like, one of my other struggles, I'll say, it's kind of an internal struggle too, is just because, again, in this industry, so to speak, we often buy things that are from other places and we just justify them, right? Like, one of them is peat moss, which we'll get there, but like vermiculite, for example, or different things where we just don't think about it. And like, maybe it's not an issue right now, but maybe it will be later because it's not on the radar. My point being, we think it's okay to just often take things from an area to put to another area way too often, without justifiable cause or whatever. Going back to my justification, right? Because I can do that. That bed, I will say, I don't know if he said this. I didn't hear him say this, Tyler. Those beds, he's got one sitting out in California. I think it's California. Sorry, dude, if I'm wrong. In his parents' property since 2015, outside, right? So they're meant to hold up. Those beds are tough as the day is long. So my justification in having those minerals inside of a location for, you know, me mining them even off my property or what have you, is the longevity. It's not like I'm turning and burning anymore. I'm not buying bagged peat. I'm not even using perlite anymore. I'll use old bagged soil if it's around. That's why perlite is in my beds. But it's like I'm trying to get away from all of those things and that mentality and that thought process to thinking like some biology or some rock is better than the other. Like, honestly, that's how we got in this problem, is with this reductionist thinking. So I think, and I'm not against science. I just think it's so rampant right now, the reductionist thinking, that we can't even garden because we're like, oh, I've got to be perfect first. And it's like, that's not fucking true. Like, I don't know where that ever came about, but like, you know, so that's why I try to simplify it so much for people. Even, you know, dangerously so. And I get that. I'm okay with that. That's fine with me. But so anyway, that's the E horizon for you, right? And the importance is like, as you've heard Leighton say, it's like your water catch, if you will. It's the drainage layer, but it's also like your surplus. The picture I a million pictures I couldn't send you are roots that are even shooting through that. So these are 18-inch beds. The formula that I copy, Leighton, is 1-4-2, or I'm sorry, 1-2-4, right? One ratio of 1 to 2 to 4, the E to A to O. And that's when I'm building it out, because I have another point I want to make later when I'm showing you this that I've brought up with Leighton and other people too, that I'm amazed by right now. But so it's not that much sand and gravel, but nonetheless, it's not what somebody buying this bed off the shelf that would think, you know, just living soil, like they'd spin their ass if they didn't have that much compost, because I don't know who does. And even if, I'm just saying, like, to fill that whole thing with just soil or super soil or soil less medium, rather, is what I'm kind of getting at. It would be insane. And also the water, like, we all know this, right? You would just lose everything. So I love, dude, I still to this day, I love showing people in any of my gardens. I'm like, yeah, it's like sand and gravel like to like right here. And they're like, what? And I'm like, and then all like right here is about native soil, like clay and stuff like that. And they really start scratching their head then, because like then there's only about this much left in the bed. And I'm like, right there's about the, you know, the compost and everything that people would normally just like fill the earth with and plant in and stuff. And I'm like, but we've been missing it. And I've known about CEC and stuff for like a decade, right? And like, I'm just, it gazes over people. Like, you get glazed eyes quick when you start talking about some of the inner workings of, and even that's old stuff, what we knew 12 years ago, right? I'm just, you know, admittingly, that's old stuff. Like, but my point is, I think it, like, that's where people stop. Like, that's where nerds nerd out for sure. And I'm like, dude, I'm down to go. But like, some people that just want to grow plants, like, they don't need to know all that. It's just more of like, dude, here's what nature does. I can show you in a bunch of examples. Here's what I do. I know it sounds really weird, but like, here's like these layers that I built. And then, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But if you look at the A horizon now, Ken, pretty please. Thank you, man.
Pretty please. That's the first time he's got a pretty please.
I was super stoked about this clay harvest, because I've had my soil tested in the field up here, and like from Logan Labs, and it came back I had 4% clay, and I was all disheartened. I was like, damn. You know, as much as I love about this property, like, because we moved from the valley, so I'm at 3,300 feet from, you know, 1,000 feet in Phoenix and scorching hot, to like all the clay in the world down there, where it's like caliche and everybody's like bitching about clay, to like, dude, where's the clay, man? I'm here. I have to, like, after the flood, go out and find these like crackled spots, and that was like a mother lode, man. I was like, look at that thing. So I harvested it in the wheelbarrow, and that's that other, and then I took it back to the greenhouse to like just dry it off and like let it finish off before I would try my very best to homogenize it with other, or balance it rather, to make a you know, an A horizon that I forget 17% clay is what I remember I needed to shoot for. So I forget the other, I think it's 50% sand. Anyway, so there's that formulation that I was shooting for. So that's all my clay being, you know, not baked, but this is in my greenhouse in the winter. just drying off until I can actually, because you're not supposed to, you're better powdering dry clays than wet clays. I don't know if people know that. I mean, this clay came in from the flood, so it's pretty well tumbled and tossed and needs to be re-stabilized anyway. But just a consideration, you shouldn't be mixing wet soils. It makes me cringe when when people are like amending soils, but they're wet. And I'm like, dude, what you're doing is like, first of all, shouldn't be tilling anything, but like you're making like these snow, I don't know how to, you're covering your particles. You're not incorporating them. Like, I don't know. So whenever you're trying to incorporate something, it should be dried. Like, it's like when you're baking, you do all your dry ingredients and then your wet ingredients. You don't like fucking go back and forth, because then you'd have this like glommy, gloopy coated mess. But I digress. Anyway, you know what? Coming back may be difficult. I'm happy to. We can try. But can I show you guys Frank's garden real quick?
Yeah, no, dude, you can stay on after I scoop. You got a whole nother hour.
Oh yeah, Ken, you're good to stay, right?
Always.
Someone's gonna listen, right? No, just kidding. I was gonna say, I want to show you guys Frank's garden, because this is 56. Today is 56 days ago, but I'll say 55 days ago since yesterday. We started with an empty tent. Right. I mean, he had been growing plants in there and stuff. He came to my workshop, long story short, and was like, dude, how? Like, show me, this is amazing. I love it. So we dabbled down. The container we landed on is 20-gallon pots. We looked at a lot, and like, I know the trade-offs, right? There's trade-offs to everything. And I was very honest with him too, and telling him like the full living soil picture, no-till, like that whole thing that I've been doing. I haven't tried it in a 20-gallon pot yet. However, I'm doing a bunch of little prototype type things in the greenhouse. My oldest horizontal bed is in a 27-gallon tote, and I'm loving it. So I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just saying I haven't tried it, and it's not going to be a 4x4 bed. But nonetheless, this is where we decided to go. So that was 55 days ago. And then if you go to, this was yesterday, that's 55 days from planting a seed. So from putting the horizons together in the soil, you know what I mean? Building the horizons, putting the blue mat together, and ready, set, go. Those are from seed. So, did I send you? I think I did. I sent you the massive stock in his, right? I'm like, because the computer was giving me, yeah, that thing is a freaking menorah, dude. There's 11 fingers on that. And I know you guys have had Billy on to talk about the hormones in plants. This is a 55-day-old plant. And I forgot to put the Bic up next to it, but that would have swallowed a Bic up. Just saying. 55 days, dude. From seed. And it's not an autoflower. That's not an autoflower. That is a photo. Just for anybody out there that's curious. And then look at that picture, the leaf. That 11-finger indica leaf is... Dude, Frank's a big guy. That's on his couch. That is literally the face of a basketball and then some. And I see there's some coloration right there. Like, I mean, I see that, right? But again, we weren't like, I'm not here to brag about that necessarily. I'm just like, dude, when have I ever put any garden together, nectar for the gods included or whatever, in 55 days from seed got this? Frank, he's like calling me and he's like, defoliating, and I'm like, well, we're just gonna wait a little bit. I really try to like not agitate the plant when it's in these phases. I was like, try leaf tucking, and he sends me this picture. He's like, one of these is like the size of a basketball, and I was like, oh yeah, you ain't tucking that thing. You got to get that out of there. So he's got that dry, and they're gonna frame it. It's gonna look super dope. But
it's like that, dude. That's Jurassic Park style.
For real. And now he's so I went over yesterday for the defoliation. That's he's on day 18 today. But usually, right after around 3 weeks or so, they stop stretching. They look like they'd stop stretching. So we were trying to be pretty gentle, but we did some defoliation but for I was going to say for mine, the bud is the only other, but I'll Leighton's had the bud. He knows that's good. The horizon weed. But anyway, yeah, it's a pleasure to be on and talk with you, Leighton. I know you got to scoot, but I'll continue preaching the horizons, man, and proofing that, like, you know, because Frank's not, like, literally we joked yesterday. He's like, I'm not trying to get a 4-year degree, man. You know what I mean? And like, some people are going to just nerd out beyond nerdosphere, like reading papers like I do and sending crazy stuff. Like, but at the same time, like, I also know that's not what drives it and that's not what makes it work. And so I'm like, I preach the reality of it is the biology, you know, chop and drop that building organic matter. That's the long and short of it. And I even brought this root that I say chop and drop. This is from an amaranth. I was pulling weeds on the property earlier. But this is on a path I don't want weeds to grow. So I'm not necessarily trying to build the soil here on my path. And I doubt this is going to, like, but you hear it's like hollow. It's like, you know what I mean? It's been in the soil. It's like hollow now. And so it's, you know, that's the quickest way to build biology. Like we always say, is get the roots in the ground, that cover crop, and don't till it. Like, just let those things break down. My cannabis stalks are still in the soil year after year, enriching the life and feeding the worms and feeding the fungi and the arthropods and at whole, and the, you know, the bacteria and the protozoa, to let them roll in and do what they do. So, I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'll keep rambling. I mean,
all right, and I'm going to scoot, but Gil, go ahead and put some worms in there. It's fine.
What? Yeah,
not going to hurt it.
Yeah,
they're actually going to help to mature and create aggregates very quickly. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. I was gonna hope you were gonna jump on some sort of adventure with your grow, because I know you're doing like a 4-part, right? Like a 3 or 4 way side by side kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what you were hoping. Okay, dude, that's gonna be sweet.
Leighton, love you, brother. Bye.
Love you guys all. Peace out. We'll see you next Monday.
Later,
okay. Gil, actually, my editor in chief over here is saying Gil's question, but we just answered Gil's question. But when she was coming downstairs to give me heck for it, is when it was being answered. So she just kind of missed it.
Oh,
I'm number 1 right now. Honest.
It was about worms.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we did the A horizon, which takes us to the O, right? Basically. Yeah. I know you guys know that Leighton talks a lot about the pit moss, which is the other thing. Like, we could talk at length about pit moss and peat moss. It's just a personal and ethical thing that, like, honestly, I understand that some people in our community choose to still use peat moss and that justification. And so, like, that's where I kind of say, like, look, I'm not trying to say that my justification of these rocks is better than your justification of that peat. If we're all talking longevity of 10 years of soil and whatever, sure. I'm just trying to spread a message at large to the industry that's even larger, because I think peat is being used a lot more than rocks in our industry. And that's just that's all. I'm just like, look, peat is dire. You know, lava rocks that realistically probably came from Flagstaff are not in where my regional, but I digress. I'm not trying to beat anybody up. I'm literally always just trying to showcase the examples that I am doing, that I'm like the do less way to produce more. And so anyway, the peat moss and the pit moss, that's the pictures in the O horizon I have in the bed. Sorry, if you have the O horizon. Because a lot of times I just mix them right in the bed like that. So the A, I showed you the clay, I break it up, and like I said, there's a formula. So if people are really looking for that formula, just reach out. It's like I should remember it, but 17% clay, 50% sand. I think it's 20% silt, maybe. Anyway, I could be wrong about this.
I should actually know it, because I'm going to be having to build some of these. So I should actually reach out and make sure that we've got that.
I mean, yeah, I know Leighton knows. I know I have it written down. It's just probably not sitting right next to me. But the other thing is that you fancy that, you always have to balance it, right? Because, like, look, here's what nature gave me, and I jar test it. And I have a couple of jar tests that are from when I helped set up Frank's garden, where you take different soil samples from different places to get that, idea. And then you add and hopefully get to that right window. But yeah, that's the pit moss right there that's in there. One of the things I know that Leighton talks about, and I caution people against this too, is like Americans, I don't know if Canadians think the same way, but more is more, right? I mean, if 1 times is good, 4 is way better, And so I'm like, in the case of biochar and pit moss, I don't use a ton of biochar. If I have it around, like I just did a burn, so I'll add it to some of my like hugel culture, doing creek cleanup, right? I'm going to use all of that biomass to a good way.
Good.
But if I was using biochar and or pit moss, I wouldn't probably even both of them. I'd maybe ask Leighton this consideration, but even both of them in together, I wouldn't use over 20%. So I wouldn't use either of them in 20% more than my O horizon.
Right.
But I'm saying I wouldn't use more than 10% and 10% either, is what I'm saying. I wouldn't use 15 and 15. And the reason is like you might see a slight decline right off the bat. I don't know how long that would last, but basically the short of it is like you're talking about 2 really cellulose or lignin rich products like the calcium lignin sulfonate, right? That is like the microbial food. These are microbial foods, and realistically what
building blocks.
Indeed, but we want microbes in our soil, yes, but we want them feeding not off our plants per se, but we want them to be dependent on the plant exudates so that they're cycling nutrients, right? If we provide them so much food and housing that they're kosher, then they don't need to work to exchange for exudates from plants. So it's almost like we would be feeding them salts in a way, like dumbing down our plant, disassociating from microbes, but it's the other way around. Now we fed our microbes so much that we're like disassociating them from our plants, right? Because they're like,
well, it's like mixing in wood chips into the top layer of your soil, and all of a sudden you have no nitrogen because everything's going to the biology consuming that first, and then they're not interacting with your plants. That's just one of those little things.
It's true. No, that's the same truth. And like I was going to say, to go down that rabbit hole real quick, because the catch-22, and because I used to get so much flack for mulch, right? I would just be like, look, when I would teach, I forget, AGS 182, it was a sustainable foods course college class for like we would have some labs. We would have a lot of online component that was mostly like Master Gardener supported, but we did in-person labs. And these in-person labs, I'm like, look, if it was an 8-week course, if through the entire 8 weeks you've forgotten everything I said except for mulch and mycelium, then you're good. And like, and I can get it really deep into that now. Like I forget, or rather I have to forgive myself for my lack of knowledge at the time. Like mulch, and if you see mycelium in mulch, that's saprophytic fungi. It's not symbiotically benefiting your plant. It's not mycorrhizal fungi. Those are 2 different types of plants, right? Like mycorrhizal fungi is the one that is host simulating with your plants. But saprophytic fungi, nonetheless, are extremely important. They're in, again, that carbon cycling. They're breaking down matter. They're cycling nutrients into the soil. They're getting, mineralized by protozoa, et cetera, right? They're extremely important. But so my point, though, is it's huge for water retention, humus building, UV blocking, and all of that. So I would just used to say mulch and mycelium, meaning if you water the damn mulch, or even if you didn't water the mulch, the monsoon comes, you'll see that mycelium. And you did it right. But now I understand a little more complex than that. But where I was going to go with this rabbit hole, not there, the complexity of it is, it's true if you mix that wood chip in that top layer, rather than mulching around your plants really heavy, there's less of a carbon or a nitrogen robbing going on. If you're mixing wood chips in your soil rhizosphere, you're definitely going to see nitrogen robbing going on. Yeah. There's a big but, though, and some ... And I'm going to thank Nicholas Mahmood from Green Source Gardens for saying this, because, again, I think like what they're doing is a great example of polyculture and permaculture type things. But he says, bear in mind, like, look, now that wood chip has been enriched with nitrogen. Yeah. And now when it's broken down, it's so much more than it was originally. So it's one of those things that like, okay, this is an adverse thing maybe right now if our perception tells us that. And like, you should probably know these things before you do it. Especially if you're trying to grow corn and you're like against the clock, you mix in some wood chips, it's really going to start your race slowly. Right.
Yeah,
But
you want to summer fallow that field for a year to let those wood chips break down
and
into
then
the potential they are. And then, yes. Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where like oftentimes we demonize one thing quickly or whatever. And it's like, but there is a silver lining to that. Like I've done plenty of lasagna gardens, right? Where I have seen her. I'm like, there's no way this is going to freaking like, these are all raw materials. And like, you know, after year 3, those things, dude, that was the best bed. This thing is rocking, dude. I'm like, so there's a lot to say about a lot of that. And like, but I think in gardening, we've simplified things so much. And that's been kind of my biggest fight with a machete, if you will, is like this idea again of how to. I always say this, like how to. And I'm like, well, hold on, let's talk about your situation, because what your situation doesn't change the fact that the concepts are what's solid. In the pile of textbooks for soil that I have, some probably argue about certain things. The concept is the formation happens the same way, which is why biomimicry is so important. It's like, look, if we just follow what has been laid before us, we don't have to fight so much anymore. And so that's where I think it's like, look, if we can just understand these concepts that nature gave us, it can pertain to almost every situation. And there's subtle things that we do, but just like the car, right? I'm saying, like, if you and I were to drive to each other's houses, we would drive over more or less the same things, but it would still be a different, with different vehicles, different highways, different, everything would be different for both of us. And yet we would arrive safely, but we would have to do different things and probably the same concept overall would have got us there. And that's where I'm like, look, I know, I don't really have it. It's not as concrete as saying like the watering is the steering wheel and the gas, but I don't have that worked out. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to say like, look, somehow we've gotten gardening, something that produces food or medicine so vital to our health. We've complexed it so much to where it's like people have a PhD in this. And for some reason, like other people think it's like, you
rocket
have
science,
and it's like, look, I don't have any of those things. And I often do. I've tormented myself by the amount of books I've not read. Right. And it's like, but I've been out in the garden looking and observing. And I honestly think our biggest lost teacher is observance. Where it's like, we're on YouTube and that's fine. I love YouTube, man. I freaking love YouTube. But like, we can't lose sight of our own observance and intuition as bodies of this earth. Like people on this earth are stewards, and
with that stewardship in mind, Cam 2 had a point here. Or are we just creating an environment for more microbes? And yes, because the more microbes you have, the more workforce you have in the soil, breaking down different components, building new microbes, having that carbon be sequestered. Without that biology there, none of this stuff happens. That's why it's so important to mulch. That's why, more roots in the soil is a key. You also have the horizontal gene transfer where they're creating new biology just by interacting with each other.
Yeah. The one, when you guys had Dr. James White on, man, that stuff was just blowing my mind because, I mean, again, it's just the stuff with like fusarium and things like that, pythium, where he's like, look, the presence is not a pressure necessarily when you have the diverse populations in check. They become a food source or rather a predator for other things. And rather it's because they are not I forget what you call it, but host specific. They're not necessarily host specific where they're not only like a rust, I think he exampled, that has to be on a plant. It's like, look, certain things in nature would prefer not to be on a plant. It's the fact that we come in with our brains and thumbs and create these, artificial environments that we thought was going to be beneficial to a plant that we might not have also understood that's going to be beneficial to a bacteria that we don't want, or in this case, a fungus. So that's the thing I struggle with, right? Like as a quote unquote consultant or somebody that's supposed to help people and be like it's like, look, it's not about the expertise. I understand that there are lots of those out there, and I go to Leighton, and he's my expert, but I think it's a little more chaotic than that. And I think we just kind of got to let it grow. You know what I mean?
I think it's more if you can put your sample under a microscope and see life and an abundance of life, and all you need to know is what are the bad things I'm looking for. You don't need to know all the good things. You don't need to know how everything interacts. As long as you know, okay, those are root feeding nematodes, I'm in trouble. But if you don't have that or these basic things, you can look at your soil sample and go, yeah, I'm doing half actually decent here because look at all this life.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I think, again, I don't want to like speak too negatively about reductionist because again, I'm staring at a pile of textbooks. Like it's the stuff that I read in my spare time. Like I do love information, but let me just pose this. Like Jeff Lowenfels, I love his, teaming with I have the signed trilogy. So like, I love Jeff Lowenfels.
Cool.
But like he suggests that like he was writing the column for, I think 30 years or something like that. The column in Alaska before he ever even heard the word mycorrhizae, and now he's written a book about it. And so like, the thing is and I know you guys have said it on this podcast too, like we don't even know what like 15% of the shit is, never mind what it does. And so here's my other thing, and I pointed this out to Frank yesterday when I was there, like it's not that I'm against testing, because like, look, I may be Leighton's protege, right, in a half, but like at the same time, I also don't test half as much as he would probably want me to. And it's only because of money. It's not because I don't want to. Like if I freaking could, but it's also like, it's difficult sometimes to justify $20 or $30 here or there. And I know how that sounds, but it's like, still, it's like $35 for this or that. And then it's like, look, when you get that test back, you're also expected something else that's probably not free, like, so, but that's not why I don't do it necessarily. I mean, the money is what is a prohibiting factor. The funny factor though, that Leighton and others have admitted to is like, look, when 200 acres, fine. But even in a 4x4 tent, 220 or 420 gallon pots, are you going to submit 4 samples? Are you going to submit from your best one or your worst one? And even in that pot, where are you going to sample from? Like, where are they going to test from? In a gram of soil, they're testing a drop. You know what I mean? And like that specific gravity that we talked about before, it's like, if you don't test in the middle, now you miss the nematodes. And I'm like, oh, dude. So I kind of freak out as far as like, look, it's not that science is the only end all be all. And I'm not saying science is wrong, but here is another little fact. I'm not going to disargue with religion, but there's a reason I said 6,000 years and not 10,000 years earlier. Okay. There are certain people, and I'm saying, I guess the Bible says this, that believe the earth is 6,000 years old and nothing more. And that's what I'm just saying. It's like, look, if we live on a planet where we have that diverse of a population of just a foundational belief, it's possible that our science is wrong. Just saying, it's possible. If people want to argue that it's impossible, then fine, whatever. I argue, I don't care. It's possible that our science is wrong and that we have been measuring things improperly, that's why. What I know that works is what nature shows me every year and what I observe with my own eyes. That's what I see is seeing is believing a lot of times. And like, proof is in the pudding. You know what I mean? My beds have continued to improve. I've looked at my 4x2. The very first thing I did was horizons and all of that. I didn't even know what day 55 was, but 2.5 months into it, my garden didn't look like Frank's. Also, I didn't set myself up with Leighton's compost like I did Frank. So back then, Leighton didn't have the ability to ship compost like he does now. So like, if y'all need good compost, holler at Leighton. But no, back then I had to use what I had. And so, but mine is improving like a sweet wine. I'm telling you, or like a tannic wine, more like really, but it's improving with time. And I'm seeing it and I'm tasting it in my flower. And that's the thing is like, if we disregard our organoleptic sense because like, how long have I been smoking weed? Fuck, dude, a long time, man. Going up.
Oh no, just a couple of days. Come on.
Like going on 20 years for me, dude. I'm pretty sure. So I know what I'm talking about. Like, there's stuff I like and there's stuff I don't like, and like, I don't go to the dispos anymore. You know, I went maybe 6 months ago, which was the first time in a couple of years, just to try something out. And I bought some organic flour and I was disappointed. I was like, dude, not only the money and everything else, but I'm like, this is revalidating why I do what I do, man, to help people out. Because like, it's, again, I'm not an expert at anything that I do. I cannot scientifically at depth necessarily. I mean, I can geek out, man, more than your average, but I can't, you know, really tell you everything of what's going on in my engine, but I don't need to, right?
Exactly. Even Dr. Elaine Ingham admits to that.
What's that?
Yeah, even Dr. Elaine Ingham admits that they don't have a real clue. You know, they're just scratching the surface.
And I'm fine with that. But like, it's like, don't regulate what other people are doing. Don't hinder their process and thinking and motivation just because science is like, you know, trying to focus and fixate on certain things. I find that honestly, it's like, look, you don't have to be great to get going. You do have to get going to be great. It's that simple. And like, yes, there's going to be learnings along the way. Murphy's going to be there, you know, 100%. But dude, it's like, look, so then we put that to the scientists, like, yo, what's going on here? I need a soil sample. But like, if we hinder ourselves right out the gate with like these idealisms, I have not had success that way. Not the way that I have now, the way that I'm helping people now with like, look, let's put the car together and drive, you know, as long as we're not. You
don't have to be a mechanic to drive the car.
That's what I mean, right? But you got to be safe about it. You can't be stupid, but you do got to understand there's some certain things. But in my mind, there's no going back. I'll never, ever, ever turn back. But, you know, I did want to tell you, dude. So I think my beds, I started with avocado tech. And I do think that maybe that was kind of one of my jump starts. I know we've talked about avocado tech on here before. Potentially do that if you're going to do some sort of horizontal, just as a play. Maybe do it with one plant and not others, as like, you know, I'm encouraging your side by sides.
I believe me, the things that I would love to be able to test, and I'm going to be able to doing this. That will be one of the things that as we move through.
Nice.
Yeah, it's doing hydro, because like I've done aquaponics, so I've done deep water culture, I've done flood and drain, you know, all of this stuff, just never in cannabis. Right. But it's the soil that I'm going to really be looking to get into, you know, and I'm probably going to start actually doing some straight super soils, like Leighton talks about, you know, oh geez, how does he low tension
soils, yeah.
Right. Do some low tension stuff, test out some different mixes, and then pick that as my organic layer. Right. I want to show people that I can go to a store and I can grab, you know, a happy frog. I can grab, you know, this one or this one or this one, and I'm gonna have a basic idea what I'm starting with.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. I mean, that is your O horizon essentially. I mean, and if like, because the alternative, with Frank's, we bought Leighton's compost and we mixed it. I had pit moss but like it's I don't need, depending on volume and whatever. And again, to simplicity and like your part, it's like, look, what are people likely going to do? Here's what it is, you know, and so that's cool.
Well, and like just to get the silt, I'm going to have to go to a soil mixing company, somebody that deals and has silt as silt, right? There's not like, you can't go to your local store and buy silt. They're gonna look at you, go, the what are you talking about, man? You know,
no, I that's so I mixed it for Frank, and I mean, because we have, I think I'm like 74% sand, but there's, like I said, I showed you in that picture like whole pockets of just silt, and I don't know if we can send silt to Canada though. Maybe
you need it all mixed together too. So did you do it all by hand, by shovel? Did you use like a
Yeah,
cement
so
mixer? Or
man, I know when I went through these pictures and I was like, oh, send him this one and sent me like, I was like 80 pictures. Golly, dude, what are you trying to do? Like I come from a, I'm a farmer, but I come from at my heart and my background, a teaching background in that sense, I mean, I'm a garden teacher. And so it's like, I have so much to share about it, but a wire mesh screen, like a 1/4 inch or like those 1/2 inch. But I try to like put everything over the same screen. So I'll take the silt and dry it out like I did with the clay. I'll just separate it, and you can do it a couple ways. You can kind of hypothesize like this is pure clay, this is pure silt, and make your mix. Or if you really need or want to, you could like jar test those individually. But time it's all like 36 hours later each time, or 24 at least. So I've done it both ways where I can mix it together and then hypothesize and test. Or I've also taken pre-samples and then mixed. So, but it's like I said before, it's important to homogenize it. You want, your sand is a good thing to have in there as like a breakup, but you definitely would not mix wet clay and wet silt. You're just never going to get them mixed. I mean, it's not
you're going to get a mud pie and a ball that you can throw at your girlfriend if you really want to, but I don't think she's going to like it. Or hey, we can do mud wrestling. We could do mud wrestling.
Yeah, there you go. It's good for
homogenization, right?
That silver liner, man. Like I said,
but always look for the silver liner.
You're not going to get it homogeneously mixed like you would want and be mixing flour and sugar and then put it in. Because the other part I didn't show in the picture was that A horizon. And if you listen to old podcasts, I don't know if Leighton's talked about it on this one with you guys about the horizons or building a horizontal. Maybe that's why I'm going through this, because I don't know if you guys have talked about building out a horizontal on Soil Matters, or maybe you have, and I'm forgetting.
Not really. We generally reference people to Shangalosa's podcast.
The YouTube, right? Where they were on YouTube where they show it, right?
Yeah, and he's also done a one with Peter Severus as well on FCP.
That's right. Yeah, that's the one I first saw him on, the 30-gallon pot. Yeah, that's the one I first saw him on. And then I've never actually watched the Shango Los one, which I'm ashamed because I love Shango. Holler to Shango. Shango Life has changed my life. Shaping Fire has changed my life, and I tell people that all the time. But Leighton Morrison has also changed my life, and so has Horizontal Systems. Like he gives. His birthday's on Wednesday, by the way. I forgot to say that. I don't know if you guys all know that, but Leighton's birthday.
Oh, Lily, write that down. Wednesday is his birthday.
Everybody holler at Leighton on Wednesday. But yeah, he gives so much. And so I try to, if everybody asks me whatever I really want, it's to be able to help people, right? And sometimes you need help up getting where you're trying to go. And when I reached out to Leighton, I felt like I was right there, but I needed these components. I'm like, man, I don't know why I can't click it, and turns out it was me. He's like, dude, relax, man. You're being too hard on yourself. And like, so it was like, there's, but yeah, I think we're all valid in this, and we all need to show up and do our calling and do our part. And for me, that has been keep it simple, and show people my example. Like, look, I'm not going to tell you anything that I literally have not done myself or that I'm not currently doing, because that's what I'm really trying to get at. But I also understand I don't want to be limiting, and like, not everyone's going to be horizontal, right? Like, I guess Mr. Toad, there's different reasons why people will have to do different things. And also the soil systems are heavy. They are very heavy. Right. Frank admitted that yesterday when we had to, heaven forbid, we had to do some shuffling around in the tent. And that's the other, one of the cons I was going to talk about, is like it's heavy. My indoor system is on casters. I have a 4x2 grass roots bed and a 4x4, and they're on casters, and so they can move around if I need them to, although that's not really I don't do that often. It's just an out of need thing that I'm like, foresight will tell me this thing.
Oh, I took 45-gallon drums. I cut them in half
Oh yeah.
And those were my beds. And damn rights, I had them on movers dollies so I could move them around.
Oh yeah, because they're not moving anywhere otherwise. They're like
No.
they're fixed to stay. So it's like, even a 20-gallon pot, like we could do it, but the idea too is you really shouldn't be moving it.
Yeah.
The horizontal, we don't want to be moving it a ton. Like, I mean, the idea is like that you get these matured soil systems that
Yeah.
or at least not be jostling it a bunch. But if you have it on casters or whatever, then that's totally fine. But
Yeah.
so anyway, my point was, I know it's not going to be for everybody, but
Yeah.
the thing is, like, I feel like regardless, though, as a whole, we can be using biomimicry as a marker, right? As like
Mhm.
here's what nature's really trying to tell us. Like, it's literally putting the organic matter that is spent all year creating right at the feet of right at our feet in order to show us, like, look,
Yeah.
here's where it goes in order to be a blanket and microbial food and everything and everything and everything. Or we take those things, we rake them up and we buy those dang brown bags and we pay our municipality to come collect them and then pay them to not compost them, right? And then we
Yeah.
pay for some Scott's fertilizer because our yard is dead because all the worms have left and nothing is
Well,
eating
you've
the leaves.
raked it and moved your leaves, and you've got your biology. Soil
And
has
now,
nothing to
and we have to
feed
aerate
on.
it, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
I grew up seeing yards get aerated and fed and
Yeah.
and rake and leaves get raked. And I'm like,
Yeah.
literally, if you stopped raking your leaves, you could also stop aerating your yard and stop freaking feeding it fertilizer and stop paying for those brown bags. But
But
it
it was
wouldn't
the
look
latest
so
and
cool.
greatest thing.
But it wouldn't look the same, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just never been a concern. I'm like, why do leaves look ugly? They don't look ugly. Like, who's ever decided that? But never mind that. It just
I'm waiting to
so-
mulch mine. Like I'm heavy into fall, and I've got half my leaves have fallen. I'm just waiting for the rest of the fall, and I'm going to run around with my mulching mower, and I'm going to mulch that into my grass. Like, like, don't
totally.
break it up. Like,
Yeah,
that's food.
I don't know. Hashtag leave the leaves, man.
Yeah.
I look out, like, we always leave them, and I never, like, right now before fall, there's not a single leaf on the ground. They all get
Yeah.
eaten. Like, they are all necessary. What I have are worm piles.
Yeah.
But actually, if on the I think it's in O Horizon. On that note, can you pull up the one? There's a picture where there's like my bed with leaves in it, and
Is that in the O Horizon? Do you remember which one?
I think it's in O Horizon. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we'll open that.
And it's the 4x2. I think it is.
I
It's a little
think it was
4x2 bed.
that one we had already.
Yeah. So look.
Here.
So this is when I was like rebuilding the bed, because I was going to talk about soil levels later too, but like this is from the property, right? You can see a cannabis stem in there, but that's also like a branch from like an alder tree or something, and ash tree leaves. So that really lignin-rich material is what I'm throwing in there, because I learned, after doing avocado tech for maybe it was like 2 years where I would do, maybe not 2 whole years, but I forget how many cycles, maybe 4 cycles where I was doing feeding it appropriately, like per avocado tech, which also, by the way, sorry, I should say shout out to Blue of Green Tank, because that's the guy that, like, originally I reached out to him, was like, dude, what are you doing? This is super rad. And do you have any pointers for me? And he's like, look, if I was to do it again, I would have done it like Leighton Morrison says in his horizontal system. So like literally that's the dude that steered me onto Leighton.
Yeah.
And if you ask Tyler, or Blue, sorry, bro, if you ask him it's never about the avocado. It was never about the avocado. Like, are there fats and things that are going on in the avocado? Hell yeah. But like, he even came himself to be, calling it later the biology bomb. But
and that's what it is.
It's literally, it was the housing for whatever amendment and whatever kind of like push you're trying to make at that time. Like, so if people that don't know, like in a nutshell or in an avocado shell, what it was like, NPK, it kind of followed still that sort of methodology, because again, we know that plants need NPK, right? Like we know that, and calcium and stuff. So we'd amend with like calcium, but like you would amend with like green leafy things, right? And I mean amend. So you would take a half an avocado, take the pit out, right? And in one of my beds, I think I sent you that picture. There's an avocado plant that like it volunteered itself, so that's kind of cool. But you take half the pod and you put your green leafy mix in. You just, in the food processor, your guacamole, basically. You take the avocado part out, and so then P and K go along the way. You put your phosphorus-rich things, pumpkin seeds and stuff like that, and then in K, like do banana peels or fruit. Like I would put like dark pigmented fruit in for things that are going to be like purple weed or something. Like putting like like blueberries and stuff like that. So, and then, but, again, considerations, if you're doing this outside, like the greenhouse, like you might consider less sweet things if you're in an environment where ants are going to be a potential issue. In my indoor grow, it was not an issue. It's obviously a little easier to control my indoor grow, even though my indoor grow looks like Frankenstein's lab. I have fucking spiders everywhere. I have lizards that get in there, scorpion. I have everything. It's basically like a greenhouse, but just with insulation and lights. And AC. It's like I'm very rugged with my my grows, but I talk about this later. I'll talk about bud washing and stuff. But anyway, that's. I mean, I think it's important to get those components down, I guess, if you will, if you're going to be starting like the worm bin. But I think this is the thing that jump started my beds is the worms, which was the avocado tech. Now I don't do avocado tech. When I we don't have to go there yet, but sorry, my nose keeps itching. The folder that I sent that was titled Buds, I haven't used avocado tech like this whole season. But only because, again, I think I've reached a platform right now, or if I have to amend later, I'll probably do it with avocado tech.
So do you want me to go to Buds?
O Horizon. Yeah, we did O Horizon. Let's do it. Let's do it. I don't see why not. I was going to say, because we could do biology maybe in some bit too, but Buds is perfectly there. So I was just going to say, I mean, the flower tells us, right? Since you guys know the muncher juice, though, that flower is really pretty and it was very tasty, but that's, horizon weed grown with worms. Like, again, I don't feed anything. So this is, again, shout out to Blue, because his buddy Frank, and if you're ever in Maine, you should hit up their dispensary, Meristem, Maine.
Cool. So
it'd be really cool. They're all regen dudes, obviously. But he's the one that gifted me this pack of double OG Chem, and it's delicious. It's OG Chem and OG Sour. It's delicious. But that bud fell over. It was so dang heavy.
You gotta love those ones, though. Come on, then you get to tie it up and go, oh yeah, you're gonna be beautiful.
I let her finish like that for like 3 weeks. So that was the room. That was the room. You can see the double OG Chem in the back. Like she's the one that's on that far back wall back there. Yeah. That's her. Yep. So this bed, I believe, was not given muncher juice. Okay. I could be wrong. I have to look back through my whatever little lack of notes that I keep nowadays, but rather this would be a text message of like, hey, I got the muncher juice. I'm like, cool. I probably applied it this day. I don't know that I ever gave these plants any muncher juice. I only say that because when we go to the next, I think this is the same folder. It might not be in this folder. Maybe it's in.
Well, there's that one too.
Oh yeah, no, this one right here. Okay, so this is the current grow. This was maybe taken 4 days ago or something like that. Look at how green the leaves are, like all the stems. And I like this is another thing I know you guys have talked about with Billy on here with the muncher juice experiment. Was like for me, when I do defoliation, purple petioles was a norm. Like it was not a thing that you were like, yeah, of course you have purple petioles. Like who didn't have purple leaf petioles? Like everybody had purple leaf petioles. And I may be just like the rookie or whatever, and I just didn't know this for so long. But it freaked me out one day when I walked into, I believe it was the indoor grow, but also the greenhouse, because I was like, damn, let me go check the other one. Mm-hmm. After I had been applying muncher juice, and I was like, they're all fucking green. It's like, dude, the whole room is green. it's a weird feeling, man. I'm just saying, because I've grown since 2012. I've grown cannabis since 2012, and like, you know, that's a decent amount of cannabis, and almost all of it all the time has purple leaf petioles. But the other thing in that picture was like, look, dude, if they were praying anymore, they'd be folded up on each other. Like they're
no
praying.
doubt, eh?
And that's, again, I attribute that to the horizons and the blue mat and the living soil beds, the grassroots living soil bed. I had a buddy of mine ask me this recently, Atayo, about the fabric beds. And like, I think unanimously people have had experience with fabric beds. I've had tons of experience with fabric beds, or fabric pots. Sorry, not fabric beds.
Right.
They demand more water, especially in a soilless medium or a low tension soil. You know what I mean? And that, I don't know if you want to torture yourself with that side by side, put like the low tension soil in a normal pot, like a standard pot that we all grew up on, and then use a fabric pot, and then use a grassroots pot. You're going to see differences for sure. I would say almost neck and neck, the grassroots and the standard, depending on the holes on the bottom, what you're growing and all that. Right. Yeah. But those living soil pots, like that's the difference. And I know I tell people this, I'm like, look, I'm not brand promoting. That's not what's going on here. Like what I'm doing is product promoting. Yes. I'm not brand promoting. Like I'm not that guy. Like people that know me know I'm not that guy. What I am saying is like, look, here's this shit that works. There's this shit that changed my life. I've been at this for a while. And like, dude, I'm telling you, I'm not going back unless this becomes the new norm and someone's like, yo, try this. And like, but for me, I'm like, dude, no, this has been tried and true. You can look at Steve Cantwell's operation. Like, I know he did the whole saran wrap and like, but like, dude, that was the missing link. It's or as far as we know it now, right? So grassroots.
And remember, just like Tyler was saying last week, you know, it all is your environment, whether you're going to get the one with the plastic inside or you're not. You know, it's your environment, because you're either trying to keep moisture in, or you're trying to let the moisture out, depending on your environment.
No, and that's right. I mean, so that's a good segue too. But no, those three things right there, the blue mats, the horizontal, and the grassroots. But I swear by the efficacy of all three to like independently, you know what I mean? Because I've had stuff on blue mat that well, hang on. Have I had stuff on blue mat that's not horizontal? I don't think I have. So I can't say that. But that's fair. But everything I've done on horizontal next to something that's not is night and day. And the fabric pots from grassroots it's night and day. It's just astronomical. But the thing with blue mats is, again, in my 12 why am I saying 12 years of growing? I don't know why I keep saying that. 12 since 2012, maybe 11 years or whatever. Of growing cannabis, and I've grown plants before that, like garden before that or whatever. But cannabis has
I started with tomatoes and vegetables, right?
It's our gateway drug to cannabis. But cannabis has that profile of praying that we all talk about, like that inverted taco, right? And never in my career, or whatever you want to call it, my relationship growing cannabis, have I seen it praying so much. It's always praying. As long as my blue mat reservoir is full, or and my greenhouse is on pressure, so I have the blue mat pressure reducer, which they're hella expensive. I'm not saying that stuff is cheap, but it's a one and done. The idea is to save your water. My plants tell me when they want water. I don't have to remember on an overcast day to go turn off my water because I'm on an automated system. It's not that. They know that as they get bigger, they drink more, and it is a compensatory system like anything else I've seen. And so that's why I promote it. Again, not the brand, the product.
Now, do you wrap your sensors in the clay and burlap like Leighton recommends?
I have not done that yet, and only because, you know, I could have done it when I rebuilt the system, but when I was building it, I hadn't heard that recommendation. And I mean, funny enough, I can blame Leighton since I was building it with his guidance. I didn't know to, you know, but whatever. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world to do it now. But no, again, I kind of operate with that. It ain't broke, don't break it. And I do have the soil moisture meter from Blue Mat also, like that digital meter probe, which is very handy for blue mats and especially living soil. But again, I think most of the people that bloom at work with are not on horizontal.
Yes.
And same with
Yeah.
living soil grassroots pots. They're not on horizontal.
Yeah.
That's still very much a unique thing, but again, I can speak to its power. I don't know which ones I might have sent you. Hang on real quick. Can you still see me, or did I pop off?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to go. I'm just trying to remember which ones
we got Tech 1, 1.5, 2, 3, and
oh, that's right. They're all in Tech. That's what they all are. Okay, if we go to Tech 1,
okay,
I'll just like, I think it's in one of those, in the Tech ones that I was sending, that because I knew I was going to say a lot about the bottomless pots. So here's the reason I brought up this picture was there's the bottomless pots that Tyler talked about a lot on the show, and they are having, great success with those. And like, that's the one that he asked Steve Cantwell, like, hey, do you want a liner in these? And he's like, no, I actually don't, because, I'm using a different medium, yada, yada. He talked about this stuff. Like when people are in nursery settings, oftentimes it's a different medium and et cetera. He also said, usually they're in a saucer, an individual saucer per, but in here, you see, I have them on HDX lids, and that sand essentially is my little E horizon.
Cool.
So the reason I did that too is because I do apply mycorrhizal fungi, right? Like powdered. And so I'm knowing that as these plants grow, because this was my quote nursery before the greenhouse. So all these plants are set for the greenhouse, which that may be pertinent. They're going to live in this for a couple months. Which was the thing that worried me about the 1 gallon size, because I don't feed, which is why I hit it late enough for that muncher juice. I was like, bro, I need something to give these things. Biology might not be enough in this little pot. I'm not feeding anything. I just don't do it, and I won't. You know what I mean? I'm like,
yeah.
Other than worms, I'll figure out a way to make my nursery more robust later. But right now, I'm like, it's a very finite. Like once I get it going, it's got to be like I'm ticking time bomb. So. But I wanted those roots to be able to communicate with each other while they're in that pot, because they're going to communicate with each other while they're in the greenhouse, right? So that's where I'm like, all these were basically, I know as soon as they're growing out and those root hairs are crossing each other, there's communication going on. And I'm like, look, this canna plant is talking to this one. And then when they get
horizontal gene transfer.
Exactly. So the other thing I wanted to show about this bed, again, product, not brand, because I can't think of the brand. These lights right here, I'm just promoting for just a second. I'm not getting any kickbacks from nobody, so don't think it's like that. $100 bought me all 6 of those lights, right? This is for my situation, but I'm speaking on this because this is again how I try to teach people to think about the concepts of their grow, rather than try to find the best light or find this that is this. Like, look, what do you need? What and why are you doing something? And the how will come to you. So what I needed was a light that I could illuminate my nursery and my greenhouse with. So I got this light. I jumped on Amazon, $100. I found this light. And it just so happened that another client buddy of mine at the time was also looking for supplemental lighting, and he had bought that brand of light, that same fixture, but he bought it under the 3500 Kelvin, the like a little bit warmer lighting for bulb for flowering. So I was looking for the full spectrum, the 6500K, just because of what I was using it for veg in the greenhouse. So, but I was able to test the Amazon claims with my, I bought the par meter and the kilowatt. So like I was able to test the Amazon claims on his lamps that he was going to send back anyway, because it didn't work for him. Like they were working, but it wasn't his design. And like, that's fine. That was his own thing. But for me, I'm like, oh dude, it says it's 200 par 8 inches away. That's 200 par 8 inches away. It's 45 watt fixture. I'm like, it's saying everything it says, $100. I bought it. So then that other picture with the greenhouse, if you look, that same $100, now my light was doing 2 functions. So as soon as my nursery plants got, basically July, between June and July is when they go in, but like, it's still even too early for me. I got to like push it to July. But the plants, they get shoved out into the greenhouse. And then I put those lamps out horizontally, yes, across the 4x12 bed. So now I have 2 rows. And again, I'm using the same light. And those lights, for anyone that is curious enough, when those lights were in the tent like that, that was a free tent too, by the way. I didn't buy the tent. So I'm just, again, I'm
Sure.
always like, use what you have. If people are giving you stuff, be forever blessed and thankful, and like use it until their seams bust and then tape them, you know? But those 6 lamps stacked like that together were throwing, I think it was like 400 to 600 par all the way down like a foot below. So, I mean, it had enough juice to really do something if you really needed it to be like a kind of a closet fixture for you. You know what I mean? It can do some, depending on how you manipulate it. Like, you know, my buddy had it all fixed on one fixture. I had mine on independent ratchets so I could really tease my canopy or whatever, but to each their own. I'm just saying it's kind of what you make it when you have a fixture that versatile. Now I've got this one 4x2 fixture that was throwing 400 to 600 par spread over my 4x12 bed, you know, way under par. But the reason I was using it then was different than when I was using it in my tent. The reason it was in my greenhouse was supplemental lighting. I would have it kick on at 4, like maybe 45 minutes before sun up and stay on 45 minutes before sun down. And it would come on like whenever shadow is, like I would time it. It was on a timer. So, but my greenhouse is ill placed for cannabis. I'm just going to say that, but it was there. So whatever, I'm like, I'm going to use it. So a light supplemental lighting helps keep me in veg just enough time until I can pull the lights. I pulled them on January 27th this year. And I've been harvesting this week. I'll let a couple go a couple more weeks. I'm going to get some more amber out of them. I just needed some bud. I'm like, all right.
Have you experimented with the difference between letting them go later and having the more amber to you know, a middle time zone where it's a 50-50 to when they're almost all clear on the trichome heads? Have you experimented with that at all?
Oh, for sure. And like mostly because, you know, in prohibition days, like I've had to early harvest just because of like, you know, the landlords coming. Like, all right, well, they're coming down on day 38, and that makes for a seriously speedy high. I mean, like the kind I don't like, right? Haze, like hazes. I don't love hazes, or generally like really powerful sativas. They make me jittery, and I'm not that. You know, I can take pretty strong indicas and be, but yeah, no, I have found this, and I know they're still trying to tease it out, because realistically we know terpenes drive so much of that effect, and the terpenes they develop along with the trichome ripeness in the resin head at different times too. And I think there's still so little known about some of the terpene effects. Like I've reached out to Dr. Ed Rosenthal, and it's still on my to-do list to follow up, actually, because I've wanted to tease out the effect of, for the longest time, for thiols and mercaptans versus terpenes. So AKA stinky weed, right? Like until 2001, which this somehow baffles me, because again, I'm not a scientist, but I'm like, I knew they were thiols. Like, how do you not know that the things that produce skunky and sulfuric, I'm saying a scientist that does this stuff all day.
Yeah.
The odorific molecule that produces the stinky compounds to things in life are thiols or thiols. Thiosulfonate or whatever is a skunk molecule. Methyl thiosulfate, I think, or methyl. I don't know, whatever.
Don't ask me.
But they're not terpenes, is my point.
Yeah.
And like terpenes have got such a front headline and such a thing. And now we're like trying to bring back old stuff, and we talk about gas and funk. And I'm like, bro, that Chem Dog shit is not terpenes. I'm saying I can't prove it because the studies aren't there right somehow. But I'm like, dude, in 2001, they finally figured out that skunk number 1, the thing responsible for it is the same chemical in skunk. I'm like, yeah, it's terpenes, like terpenes, but odor molecules follow that same rule. And they're like, yeah, it's a methyl sulfate butane or thiol or something like, or methyl butyl sulfate thiol. Thank you. Something. Yeah. And I'm like, again, I'm like, dude, I wish I had just been like maybe in the right place at the right time to research this. Cause I'm like, dude, was just somebody not asking the right questions? But again, cannabis was in prohibition for so long. And like, skunk especially was one of those things that like people were avoiding because it gets you busted, you know? And so I don't know. That's kind of where I'm like, I don't know. But to answer your question, I have been guilty of harvesting. I feel like most times when I'm mostly cloudy and like maybe 15% amber, and then I get trigger happy. And I still do that. Like if I have one flaw in my whole thing, it's just that I freaking can't wait, man. I just can't wait. But no, I'm about half harvested, including my CBG,
Right.
which is helping me with my waiting, right? My CBG plant was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Good.
But I harvested plenty. My Gorilla Glue, I took her. She was all, her hairs were dyed back, but she was still pretty clear. And milky, like clear and milky. There was a few little ambers going on, but then the
Have
rest
you
of
ever cut your bud open and spread her open and looked at the inside?
yeah, for sure. There's different,
Cool.
there's different ripenesses going on at different times for sure.
Yeah.
But like I guess the old hash heads would say like the most pure medicine is like in the ripest resin heads, which is like the amber heads, is like, but so I feel like maybe I was reading something not too long ago too about it, and like just how they kind of blamed the industry because like how we got to early harvesting was like, look, we would basically, you wanted to be the first one to market before the rush, right? And then oftentimes too the rain, right? Now it's like literally we're trying to beat the weather or something like that sometime. And so when we still got these psychoactive effects or whatever, but if you ask me, I think my most medicinal, I smoke a lot. I smoke recreationally too, whatever. I smoke all day. It's all medicine to me. But my most medicinal like relief that I get for chronic pain and stuff is when I have more amber in there. And so like, I really do want to try to go to 30 to 50% amber and see if I like that more. Cause I honestly have not. That's so long. It's like, dude, I think you're going to be in flower for like 11 weeks, man. I'm already on week 10 right now. I'm at day 72 in there, and I'm like looking at another week and a half. So, and these are not sativas. These are Gorilla Glue and Chemdog. Well, Chemdog was a sativa, I guess, but Gorilla Glue is an indica cross. I don't care what people say. So ask Josie Wales, man. Rest in peace.
Hey, and I'm gonna get lucky because the guy I'm dealing with who chooses to remain anonymous, he's the seed guy. He's the has been playing with this stuff for a long time, and he's just basically giving me 38 different strains to try.
Wow, nice, man. That's a heck of a gift. That's awesome.
And he's coming out here to work too. He just won't be on camera. We're gonna be live streaming this shit.
Sweet, man. I love it, dude. I love it. That's like such a dream, man. I think it's just the way to show people and bring it out to like, look, here's what it's really all about. And just like, there's not a way, there's ways, but
so many.
Right. But I feel like regardless of the way, which would be the how, it's the what and the why that we ought to start first asking ourselves. What am I trying to do and why am I doing it this way? Like for me, ethics drives a lot of what I'm doing, right? And so I think the power of a side-by-side is amazing. And I've talked to Leighton about doing this. In fact, he sent me some muncher juice that's still in a gallon. I'm like, bro, I'm so sorry. I've been busy. I'm trying to do a side-by-side of cover crop and stuff. But like for me, when I do something, mostly it's ethics driven. Not necessarily like, is this the best or whatever, but I think we're still in an age of people that look for stuff like that. And like when you're exploring these myriad of growings, you can also at depth explore the ethics behind the different ones of like, look, traditionally this system, yada, yada, or so.
Yeah.
And I think it's really powerful to be able to hold that space, I guess, and not be judgmental, because like we think things are so right and so wrong, you know, and
there's so many different ways to drive to the same valley, the same top of the mountain. There's all kinds of ways to get there. And if we can, just where you live, your environment's going to dictate what's going to work best for you. Your physical ability, like you're talking the horizontal system on 7-gallon pots and how much weight there is, to try to move that for somebody that's disabled. They're not going to be able to grow that way. But hey, if they can have an aeroponics system right? It's 100% soilless and no weight there, then they can move that around all day.
Yeah. And I think like maybe, yeah, there may be something that to say about like the general mass or whatever of like, if we can grow gardens outside or whatever, like there's stuff we probably shouldn't be doing. But yeah, there may be limiting in circumstances where it's like we shouldn't be quick to judge, but judgment doesn't necessarily, you know, just because you have ethics and you're enforcing it doesn't mean you're judging something else either, I guess. You know, that's maybe, I feel like we're so critical of so many things, and maybe we just need a little more grace and understanding of like, look, it's not that I'm condemning you or condoning. That's not my position. Like, you know, it's not, but here's what I'm doing and here's why. Like, that's just, it's like, but yeah, the proof is in the pudding, man. So, I mean, I know we showed the buds. I don't know what else I sent you now. I'm trying to, what else did I send?
We got some more tech stuff.
I said we talked about the bottomless pots
and biologies. I think it's we got Tech 1.5, Tech 2, Tech 3, and the biology are the only ones we've got left. Would you like to come back on next week for an hour and do those other ones?
I probably could. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if it's necessarily that. I might have oversent you stuff. It's quite possible, right? I mean, maybe because I was gonna. I mean, I'm not fully done harvested, but I was gonna talk about like the bud washing and stuff like that, and like basically adversity to genius, you know. Because I did harvest. I had spider mites, and I'm like, bro, I'm harvesting them, and I'll come back on next week. But if anyone is, I'll say this just because maybe someone's harvesting this week and is dealing with this. So I really wanted to go here. Bud washing is incredibly amazing. Even if you're not dealing with spider mites, I bud wash all my greenhouse stuff. I bud wash a lot of my indoor stuff too, because again, I'm like I said, Frankenstein. I let stuff go in there. It's all biology to me. I'm not wearing a lab coat and I don't have a microscope. So I'm like, I'm not in there saying good and bad. Like cannabis is good. That I know. And as long as it's not bad, we're good. That's how you know. But like the so I bud wash everything and I can tell the longer version of the spider mites next week or whatever. But basically I made the decision to be like, look, I'm just gonna ride this out. And the things I know about spider mites are, first of all, I know I've joked like everyone about smoking them, right? Like, oh, we're just going to smoke them in the pipe, man. It's extra protein or whatever. If you've ever gotten to the point where you harvest with spider mites, you will know that as soon as you hang your plants, they're walking straight up that stem and they get on the line and they die. They are looking for a living plant. They eat chlorophyll. You're not going to get spider mites you couldn't do anything to make them stay on your bud. So, I mean, I know we all joke and I joke, I mean, but it's like, I'm not worried about the spider mites. I don't want their shit on my flowers and I don't want their webs on my flowers, but I don't want shit from anything or regular spiders. I have regular spiders. I have roly-polies on this Kim Dog D plant that was, I had in the greenhouse. For some reason, the roly-polies liked it. And I'm like washing the buds and before I was washing, I was pre-cleaning. And I'm like, there's so many roly-polies up in this bitch. Like, but there were. And so I'm like, again, if you don't wash, like I could show you the stuff on the bottom of the buckets. I show one of the pictures was the buckets, but we can do that next week. It's gnarly, dude. It's gnarly. And I mean, the devil's advocate to this is like, look, I was just the other day in the bathroom, the sun's coming through the window and I tear a sheet of toilet paper and like, just so much shit in the air, like not shit in the air, that'd be gross, but toilet paper fibers, right? Like countless. And you're just like, oh my gosh, we are breathing that in. Like you ever see dust in the sunlight, right? It's like, we are breathing in so much stuff. We just need to relax, first of all. Like that's why I don't
landing on our skin.
It's like, bro, calm down. I'm not out there wearing a mask to prevent life from hitting my lungs. Like, so that's the other thing. I'm just devil's advocate. I've smoked plenty of gnarly weed. I've smoked brickweed that smelled like ammonia. And I'm like, that shit is composting. Like, whatever, bro. Smoke that at 10 of my CDs. I don't now. I would never. And I mean, so that's why I bud wash. But anyway, the long point to my story was, if you're at harvest and you're like, what the hell do I do? I've seen videos with vacuuming. I've tried vacuuming. I don't recommend it. You have it only because like it's seriously hard to get close enough to your buds with enough suction to get that webbing off with not getting your trichomes off. And like, it's a mess. Like, forget about it. And especially if you're talking about a crop, right? You're not talking about one plant. I'm talking about a fucking greenhouse overflowing with buds. Like, no, we're not doing this. So vacuuming is like, that's just, again, if I haven't done it, I wouldn't talk about it. I don't love what it does to my plants. I'm like, ooh, bro, that's a sketchy. But I have seen like in one video, dude took the whole cola, just vacuum over the cola. I'm like, oh, hell no, bro. You put your cola inside the vacuum, dude. So I'm like, I'm just thinking of all the trikes getting sucked off. Anyway, I'm just, that's too much, man. That's too much. So what I did, sorry, I digress again. What I did, I have these sharp tweezers, like your really pointy tweezers, and you get the bud, like, because if you've had spider mites, they essentially make a sheet over the bud. It's not like they're weaving through the calyxes. You know what I mean? They're not making weaves all through the sugar leaf. They spin a web that is more or less a veil over the bud. And while it may be reducing photosynthesis and they're, because of chlorophyll and light penetration, things like that, and like potentially pathogen pest site, like there's things you want to be watching. Don't just be nursing fucking spider mites, but like, sure, you're watching your crop. And if things are kind of going along, then you can go to the finish line, Now you're staring at your bud, right? I couldn't whole plant harvest because my trellis was a mess. Like, I was a mess this year in the garden. So thankfully biology and horizons and all this allows me to get to the finish still. Like, if I had still been in my old ways, it would have been a catastrophe. There's no way I would be harvesting good bud this year. But anyway, I take my plants. Here we go, camera. And I don't have a bud here, but like, say your leaves are down here. There, you just basically start at the bottom and like with those sharp tweezers, just kind of lifting that spider web up and going in between your little leaf, your sugar leaf and stuff, and like slowly peeling that veil off. And sure enough, it's like cotton candy, it sticks to itself. It's by design, it stick to itself. So like your problem becomes your solution, right? It is what is adhesive for itself to make a web. And so here you go, just de-webbing it. It's just like, and I'm not freaking kidding you. Like, one of my bigger plants took me 3 hours to harvest and wash.
I would say,
So IPM is a much better method and use of your time.
Not having the spider mites in the first place is always better.
However, Josh was busy this summer doing a million other things, and IPM did not take the front seat. And so I have a story about that later. We can talk next week again. So don't fear. That's what I wanted to hang on. Encourage everyone. If you have to.
He's going, Dad, it's time to stop, man. I need to go pee. Let me out.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, that's it. I mean, if somebody's right at harvest, since that's kind of the time of the year, and you find yourself with spider mites, I'm here to just encourage you. You don't have to kill the crop. Like, let's all do better next year, right? No matter how good you did this year, let's all do better next year. That's the goal. But, don't fret, but that's your medicine. Just, and again, like I said, those spider mites, just cut it and watch them. They're just going to be like, like there's nothing you can do to tell them to stay on that plant. There's no more chlorophyll. You've done your job. But yeah, man, I'd be happy to jump on. And yeah, I think next week could be a short one for sure. Cause there's not and that hopefully
much. Av was in a power outage. That's
why so I got the email. But yeah, hopefully he can jump on next week too.
Yeah. And it would be great. And you can always send me more pictures because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that we haven't covered, and you can always send more.
I think that pretty much covers it. That'll get us there. Talking about the tech and just basically, but just trying to be the living truth, because I don't know how often we can check in with Peter's 30-gallon or I know Shango did a follow-up podcast. I don't know if it was if they videoed it or if it was just for his podcast, but of his 4x4, they did a horizontal assessment maybe a year or so ago.
Oh, I'll
So,
have to ask Leighton about that. I haven't ran across that one.
but yeah, just trying to support and spread the message. I know other people are doing horizontal systems too. It's like, but still, I know we're few and far between. So I'm like, just serving as living proof, man.
Well, after you come on next
week,
week, we're gonna have Tom Landry on the week after that, showing off his horizontal that has in Nova Scotia.
Nice.
So yeah, you guys are gonna want to be watching that because like that's a commercial grow.
I was gonna say he's commercial, right? And he did I knew he was horizontal. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
No, that's great to hear about it. That's great.
Exactly.
Because that's really gonna, when it takes foothold, right? Like people are like, "What are you doing?" Like,
yes,
that's it, man.
And I don't think it's FCP Peter. Yes, FCP Peter. When he built the horizontal 30-gallon pot with Leighton, I don't know that he's ever done any more videos on how that pot ever turned out. So
gotcha. Yeah, because that's all. Just like I'm like, well, I mean, building them, there's enough info on that, more or less. If people dig, right? If people dig, but also people sometimes don't dig. So it's like, look, here it is. It's this simple, and here's how it freaking works. Like, look at that weed. You know, like exactly. I love weed. I'm just telling you, I love cannabis. And if it didn't work, I would not be doing it. I would be doing something else. And in fact, it works better than anything else I've ever tried. And same so to Testify Frank. I mean, he's like, he came off of other nutrient programs. That's why he came to me. Was like, dude, you know, he's like, this is crazy. This is just worms, you know what I mean? And like people pay money and time and everything else that we all talk about for nutrients and failures. It's like, dude, it doesn't take much to get it wrong in those kinds of systems because they're so fragile. When this system offers such a buffering, it's not even.
I know. Yeah. I think that's going to be my biggest worry is because I've been so used to doing the soil, not having that buffering. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no.
Anyway, guys, I'm going to cut it there. You're going to be back next week, Joshua. So, just hold on. We've got myself and Andy Lopez, of course, tomorrow night. And then the ladies on the sun and the moon, Luna and Alex, have Murphy. And I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but Murray. And she's an extract expert, I think, down in Oklahoma or Colorado, one of the two.
Okay,
she's down where you guys live, not
cannabis.
in the cold north.
Cannabis or compost?
No, cannabis.
Okay.
Extractant expert for making cannabis extracts. So
we love both, right?
Oh, exactly. So
cool.
Okay, guys. Awesome. Dude, I'm gonna end her there.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. So
you bet, man. Peace out, everybody in chat. We'll see you on Wednesday. And Josh, if you want to stick around for